you all for coming to our midweek service here at Church of Acts in San Antonio, the Alamo City. And really looking forward to sharing this message with you all tonight. Again, to all our Facebook friends, Brother Al Bass and so many others that are so faithful in viewing and listening and also sharing with others. I love it when I read the comments and those that are sharing this message with others. My cousin Michael Garza out there by Galveston. I think he said the city is Dickinson, something like that, out there in the Galveston area. Anyway, you know who you are. So thank you all for joining us. And I'd like to share tonight what I've entitled The Greatest Light Show on Earth. We're going to go to John chapter 8, verse 28. The greatest light show on earth. You can add every 4th of July celebration, every single one ever celebrated in America, and it would still not come close to the light that was glorified on the day of the crucifixion. John 8, verse 28. When you lift up the Son of Man. Now notice, again, as a teacher, I'm very, very careful in what I read. He did not say, when you lift up Jesus the Christ, when you lift up the God-man, when you lift up the man God. He said, when you lift up the Son of Man. That in itself is such a message of its own. The Son of Man. When you lift up the Son of Man, then, notice now, then you will know that I am He. Saints, that is so deep. He said, no, not for the sake of the miracles, not for all the things that you've heard, that I've declared, that I've taught. He said, when you lift up the Son of Man, talking about the crucifixion. When this is done, he says, you will know that I am He, and that I do nothing of myself, but as my Father taught me, I speak these things. Verse 29. And He who sent me is with me. The Father has not left me alone, for I always do those things that please Him. Well, so much for Psalms 22. Have we not been taught? Psalms 22 verse 1, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? So is there a contradiction here? No. When Jesus proclaimed that from the cross, He was speaking our statement. The times that we've cried out, my God, where are you? Why do I feel forsaken? Why can I not hear you? Why can I not see you? Why can I not sense you? He was declaring our vocabulary, not His own to the Father. He just said it here. The Father's never left me alone. The union of the Father, Son, and Spirit has always been one. Never dysfunctional, never separated, always in total unity. So notice, he's speaking of the act of the cross, of the crucifixion, that the cross was the best light show of all ages put together. Now, saints, this is amazing. So he's saying, the greatest illumination of what I have come to declare unto you will be seen when I'm on the cross. Not teaching in the synagogue, not going into the temple, not preaching to the masses, not healing the sick, raising the dead, casting out the devils. He said, the greatest depth of illumination of my identity will be on the cross when I am lifted up for that of your sin. Now, look at verse 12, if you will. Jesus spoke to them again and said, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk, what? In darkness. Notice again, I'm the light of the world. Those that walk with me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. Now remember John chapter 1, verse 4. In him was life. And the life that was in him was the light of men. Remember that. So, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word was God in the beginning. And all things were created by Him, through Him, for Him. And in Him that was in the beginning, in Him that was life, in Him that was God, in Him was life. And the life that was in Him becomes the light of men. So men are taken out of darkness when they understand the union that they have with the Trinity. And understanding the union with the Trinity turns on the light and takes you out of darkness. It's not the denomination you belong to. It's not the religion that you stand for or believe in. The light that shines within you is when you understand that the life that was in the Word with the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, that you are in union with the Trinity. That's your light. I like what St. Francis said. Go and preach the gospel. And if need be, speak. Did you catch that? St. Francis said, go and preach the gospel. And if need be, speak. In other words, you're the light. Amen. It's not what you teach. It's not what you preach. It's when people see that you're not walking in darkness. Saints, that statement alone is amazing. So, with this, what I want us to see is this. He who knew no sin. Okay? Listen now. He who knew no sin came in the likeness of sinful flesh. Limited to that of humanity. And yet, he says, when I'm lifted up on that cross, I'll draw all men unto me. You will see my I amness at the highest peak when I am lifted up. Saints, that, as a teacher, that blows my mind. So then, in verse 12 again, I'm the light of the world. Let me explain this. When he says, those who follow me shall not walk in darkness. What that is saying is this. Because I am the light, when you walk with me, you will echo, you will radiate, you will hold, you will resonate exactly what was in me on this earth. You will express the light of life. As you journey with me, walk with me, journey with me. And what I've expressed, he says, when you see me, you've seen the Father. For the Father and I, we are one. So now he's declaring, so now when people see you, you are resonating me. You are my echo. When people see you walk in light. Because the light comes from my life. Man, that that blows my mind away. So then, understand this. When you lift him up, when you lift up the Son of Man on the cross of your judgment. See, the cross was not Jesus' judgment. He had no sin. So what he's declaring is this. When you place me on the cross of your judgment, that is the greatest light of the love of the Trinity to mankind. Let me tell you this. The early church never believed that the cross was to save mankind from God. They never believed that, ever. That came later on, generations later, where God was so upset with humanity that he punished his only Son to be able to love us again. The early church never ever thought that. They never had that false doctrine, that false way of looking at the love of God. God has never ever separated himself from mankind. Not even in the time of sinfulness has he ever separated himself from us, but rather sin separates us from him. But in the mind. I'll show you that in a minute. So then, again, he says, when you lift up the Son of Man, I will declare to you the I amness that is within me. And I will demonstrate in all my doing, in the highest illustration of the 33 years that I've walked on this earth. Now, saints, you've got to understand this intro. If you don't understand the intro that I've given you, you're not going to grasp the rest of the message. So notice, he did not say, when you lift up Jesus. Again, we're in John chapter 8, verse 28 and 29. Now, why did he say, when you lift up the Son of Man? Because he came, related himself to us to remind us of what the Trinity sees in us. Likeness and image. So, remember Luke 19:10. I've come to seek and save that which was lost. What was lost? The image. So when you lift up this image, it will illuminate to all on the earth that the Son of Man is the very express image of the person, Hebrews 1:3, of the person of the Father. So because man's image had been lost, the image of God, he came to restore the image. So he says, when you lift up the Son of Man, look at again, verse 28, then you will know that I am He. Wow. Amazing. So, in essence, what we're saying is this. If you want to see in complete form the illustration of the love of the Father, Son, and Spirit, you see it in the cross. In God's design, He said, I will show mankind, I will prove to humanity the deepest, greatest love that we have for humanity, and it'll be shown in the cross. Verse 29 says it there. And He who sent me is with me. The Father's never left me alone, for I always do the things that please Him. So then, all together, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Spirit were on display on the same day, on the same hour, at the same place, through the very cross itself. The cross is not a sign of the division or separation of God from humanity. The cross is to put on display the Trinity's love for humanity in a greater way than ever shown before. Let's go to Isaiah 59. Isaiah 59, verses 1 and 2. Isaiah chapter 59, verse 1 and 2. Look at these words. Behold, the Lord's hand is not what? Shortened. What do you say in Isaiah 53? Whose report shall you believe? Unto whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? Look what he's saying here. Behold, the Lord's hand is not shortened. And yet we cry out, Lord, where are you? Why have you forsaken me? Why are you not hearing my cry? Why are you so far from my cry? And he says there, behold, the Lord's hand is not shortened that it cannot save, nor his ear heavy. Look, I'm busy right now with what's going on in the world. I'll get back to you later. No, never. But your iniquities, listen now, here it is. Your iniquities separated you, what? From God. Not God from you. Saints, you have to catch this. Because all of this stuff of, you need to get closer to God. You need to do this, do that. No. Christianity is not what you've done with Christ. It's what Christ has done with you. That's why the veil in the temple was rent from top to bottom. It was God coming to man, not man trying to reach God. So we'll see that again. Your iniquities have separated you from God. Your sins have hidden His face from you, so that He will not hear. So, as we just read here in Isaiah 59, sin separated you from God. God's on His throne. He's never left His throne. He came in the form of man to come for you, not against you. So, when you look at these two verses, it does not state separating God from you, but sin separated you from Him. Now, as we look at this, let's go to Colossians 1:21. Colossians 1:21. It is so clear here when Paul writes to the church of Colossae in verse 21. He says, "And you, who were once separated, alienated, and enemies." Where? In your mind. You've never been alienated from God. Psalm 139, where can you go that He's not there already? Even while you were in sin, you were not separated with God. Never. God's never separated Himself from you. You separated from Him in your mind. Look at it again. You who once were alienated, enemies in your mind by what? It was the wicked works that caused a separation in your mind. All right? Yet now He has reconciled in the body of His flesh through death to present you holy, blameless, and above reproach in His sight. See, your sight of God is not the same as God's sight upon you. Another one, Romans chapter 1, verse 18. I love this one. If Colossians 1:21 wasn't clear enough, Romans 1:18. Again, the whole wrath of God, false doctrine. The wrath of God is revealed from heaven against two things. What are they? Ungodliness and unrighteousness. Okay? Ungodliness and unrighteousness. So, the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against ungodliness, against unrighteousness of men who what? Suppress the truth. So, what is it that pushes truth from raising up in your mind? Unrighteousness. So, unrighteousness and ungodliness is not a person. It's an action. So, in the action of unrighteousness, here you are trying to hear the word, because faith cometh by hearing. So as you're trying to hear the word and gain understanding, if you're living some type of unrighteous manners, it suppresses the truth. It doesn't mean the truth is not in you. It doesn't mean that you're far away from God. But it's unrighteousness that suppresses the truth from you realizing the truth that sets you free. It's not the devil. It's you believing the lie that God never spoke about you. And that's a world of difference. So, what the cross is, saints, is the cross is our seal of acceptance of His love. Again, this is something that You know, we've heard so many false teachings on this that the cross was not where God rejected the Son. It is not. And again, I told you, study Psalms 22. And you look down, before the chapter ends, it tells you right there that the Father never, ever turned his face from the Son. Never. So, again, the title tonight is The Greatest Light Show on Earth. We read in John 8:12 when Jesus stated, I am the light of the world. So when the light of the world was crucified on the cross, it was the greatest light show on earth. But let me tell you what occurred at the greatest light show on earth. Matthew 27, verse 45. You need to follow with me. Only two gospel writers mention it, Matthew and Mark. Luke and John do not. And you're gonna see this. Maybe you've read it before, but not in this light. Matthew chapter 27, verse 45. You with me? Now from the 6th hour until the 9th hour. That's 9 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock. That's 6 hours. The number of man. From the 6th hour until the 9th hour, there was what? Did you catch that? In other words, we read in John chapter 8, verse 28, when you lift up the Son of Man, you will know that I am He that the Father has sent. So when the light of the world was hanging crucified on the cross, it was the greatest light show of the ages. And yet the earth was darkened. Now, what does that mean? It was highlighting our darkness. The light was being crucified, and it was highlighting our darkness. And it's also mentioned in Mark's gospel as well. I believe it's Mark 15, verse 33, just to write it down for your information. So then, the physical earth, creation, was darkened when the light was on the cross. I want you to let that soak in. The greatest light show of all ages, and yet the earth. Now, when is it dark from 9 to 3 in the afternoon? It's not. The sun's out. And yet, it was being highlighted, the darkness of the earth. Now, I want you to understand something. Let's go to Numbers 21. In the day of Moses, Remember when the people complained against Moses, cursing God? It's Numbers 21, verse 8. Why'd you take us out? Did you bring us to the wilderness to die? Where's the food? Where's the water? Where's the milk and honey? Forget the milk and honey. It's not even anything to drink. So in Numbers 21, it gives you the event where the people were being bitten by what? Serpents. Now listen. What did God tell Moses to do? Take a serpent, a fiery serpent, and put it on a pole. Now picture the cross. He gets the serpent and he puts it on the pole. And he says, tell the people that have been bitten that as long as they keep their eyes on this serpent that's on this pole, they will not die. That's exactly what the cross is. Keep your eye on the one on the pole. And even though you've been bitten with the lie of the serpent, you shall not die. Now, saints, I don't know if you're getting this. We've all been bitten with sin. Every single one of us. And we're all dying. But as long as you keep your eyes fastened on the one that was on that pole, on that cross, you shall not die. John 11:25. I am the resurrection and the life. If you believe, you shall not die. But if you do, you shall live again. It's exactly what Numbers 21:8 was expressing. And then it was manifested when the light of the world was crucified on that tree. So, saints, when you look at this, again, God has never, ever blinded himself towards us. He's never changed his mind towards us, ever. We are the ones that become blinded of his love. We are the one that in our minds we separate ourselves from him. I'm not worthy to come before him. I'm not worthy to spend time with him. I'm not worthy to pray to him. I'm not worthy to bring a petition before him. Again, go back to that orphan mentality and, the speech of a beggar. That is why when Jesus taught them in Matthew chapter 6, this is how you pray. Our Father. That was a blasphemous statement in that time. You did not have the freedom to call God your Father. I've told you before, the two reasons why he was crucified. Number one, blasphemy. When he said, my Father and I, we are one, that was blasphemy. Because that equated him in equality to the Father. And secondly, because he broke the Sabbath when he healed on the Sabbath day. For those two reasons, the Jews nailed him to the cross. So then, the greatest light show on earth. Here is God expressing the light of the world, and the earth was totally dark. Now going back to John chapter 1, verse 4. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. But verse 5 says this. And, let's go there so you can see it. And his light did something. But I want you to see it. John 1, verse 5. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness couldn't process it. Didn't comprehend. Didn't understand. Here is the light of the world being crucified in darkness. Matthew 27:45, Mark 15:33. I told you that the greatest light show on earth was in the middle of darkness, and the light, in him was life. The life was the light of men, and the light shined in darkness at the crucifixion, and darkness did not understand. Saints, again, God is not discovered. That is the portion of Holy Spirit. You cannot read the Bible 365 days a year for 40 years and discover God. It's impossible. He must be revealed. The working of salvation is not according to what man tries to do. It's not man looking for God. It's God coming down that he might be found. So understand this. This whole thing, I mean, from the get-go, in the garden, man loses the image. He's now running from God, covering himself, blaming somebody else. And what is God doing? Running after him. Asking him, where are you? Not where you are geographically. Where are you? Why are you not where I placed you? Why are you not walking with me and instead running from me? And the message has never changed. God is still chasing man. Even the times that we were not after him, the chase of him towards us has never, ever ceased. It's never changed. The direction has always been the same. Heaven to earth, never earth to man. That's religion. So, going back to John chapter 8, verse 28 and 29. Again he says, when you lift up the Son of Man, see what you can find under the title Son of Man. You'll be, yes, he's the Son of God. Yes, he's the Christ. Yes, he's Jesus. He's the door, way, truth, and life, the true vine, the good shepherd, the resurrection. He's all those things. But most important, he is the Son of Man. You and I were not saved at an altar call. You and I were not saved through a sinner's prayer. You and I were not saved at, something that you repeated. You and I were saved at the incarnation. I know that might be hard to swallow from some of our listeners, but look for it yourself. Isaiah 7:14. A sign shall be given unto you. A virgin shall conceive, bring forth a son, and you shall call him Emmanuel, God with us. Because God became man, he is known as the Son of Man. See, for us to be redeemed, for us to be reconciled, for us to be justified, God would have to do it as a man. He was fully human and fully deity, 100% for 33 and a half years. Was not just a man on the cross, not just the Son of Man on the cross. He was God on the cross. Had to be. Every sacrifice represented something. So, when he was crucified for us, he was hanging on our cross. Like I told you, this whole teaching about carrying your cross is false. If you're carrying your cross, then whose cross did Jesus carry? He had no sin. He carried your cross. So when the cross of judgment, your judgment, my judgment, he hung upon, what's to set us free? Was not to appease, again, that book, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. No. I told you, read John 18, it's the opposite. It was God in the hands of angry sinners. That's the truth. It's in John 18. When church and state came together, and Judas representing humanity. The Sanhedrin police was the state. The religious leaders was the church. Judas representing all humanity. He walked with Jesus. They all came together in John 18 it was the night of the betrayal. So, there they were angry, wanting to slay him. And Jesus asked the question, whom do you seek? And they said, Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus the nothing. And they fell on their back 3 times. So that was the night of the betrayal where it was God in the hands of angry sinners. Not sinners in the hands of an angry God. That's the true gospel. And I hear people preaching about, oh, you better do this, you better do that. Or, oh, when God catches up with you, God is so angry with you. You know, on and on. All these false teachings. What do you do with John 3:16? God so judged the world? No. God was so upset with the world? No. You see it at the Super Bowls, man with the sign, John 3:16. God so loved the world that he came himself, the Son of Man, that we might be set free in our minds. Again, Colossians 1:21, that when you were enemies or alienated from God, but where? Only up here. All this thing about the devil, about hell, look, here's your hell right here, between your 2 ears. That is the most hellish of hells that exist in your mind. So then, the cross, the crucifixion, was the greatest light show of all ages. And Jesus said, when you lift up the Son of Man, the greatest illumination will come upon planet Earth. That I am He, the one that was sent. So, one of the greatest illuminations that I find in Scripture as a teacher is that on that day of the crucifixion, Genesis 3:22 comes out with bold letters. This is what Genesis 3:22 says. After the fall of man, after God cursed the serpent, after God told man, from the sweat of your brow you put meat on your table, after He told the woman, you will have labor in bringing forth the seed, and He took animal tunics and covered man, then after that He said, now man has become like one of us. Prophesying the incarnation, prophesying the crucifixion, and prophesying the resurrection. So on the cross, He is declaring in bold letters, Genesis 3:22. Because of what the Son of Man has done, now that union that's never been separated except in man's mind has been seen greater than ever before. Where man has become like one of us, because one of us, the Son, became like one of them and brought us to unity to be seen throughout the world. And yet, when that illumination came, even the earth was darkened. When the light of the world was showing forth who He was and declaring the truth of who sent Him, the earth highlighted its darkness by the S-U-N not shining when the S-O-N shined at its greatest. That is the gospel truth. Bless you guys.